Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, applications. This video is about magnetic energy and time. I will try to do justice to this topic from a magnetic energy point of view. Of course, reminder, this is super unconventional alternative information, so please be aware of that and please be kind with your comments. So, the long short of it is, in the magnetic energy model, time does not exist. Well, that's a wrap. So let's just get into some of the dynamics of that, and I'll focus mostly on our solar system because it gives us a easier system that we can imagine. But this same principle would be applied throughout the universe. And what we call time doesn't exist if you think about the speed of magnetic energy. And it's a nearly infinite velocity that fulfills its orders, if you will, that completes its path to its destination everywhere at a nearly infinite velocity. So the problem with that is when you have something that moves that fast, all of a sudden everything can happen at once and you're outside of the idea of space and time. So how the system works from a magnetic energy perspective is the incoming energy to, let's say, for example, our solar system. The energy coming into our solar system comes in at a nearly infinite velocity, and it comes in mostly neutral, and then it goes to all its destinations to keep essentially our existence going at a nearly infinite velocity. So, but inherent in that exchange, there's an exchange rate that happens that is a nearly infinite velocity as well, and that is, in every moment there is what we'll call a subatomic, even though that's probably not an accurate way to say it. In the magnetic model, there's the idea of atomic and subatomic, and the classic model, of course, does not apply. But we'll use those terms just to help us with our understanding. So in the subatomic world of magnetic energy and the energy coming into our solar system, there is a change in the geometric configuration of those subatomic components. A nearly infinite velocity change that's happening in those subatomic components that come into our system. So they'll never be the same, okay? But the configurations, it's kind of like if you're looking up at the stars or something. The geometric configurations will have patterns that are similar to them, but they'll never be identical again. So that energy coming in has that signature, or that subatomic polarization, if you will, that comes in. That dominant feature to that energy influences everything in the system. So we're getting into another level of how our universe functions and how magnetic energy plays a role in our universe. And we're also, one of the key principles here is to recognize that these energies can overlap each other, and because they have slightly different pulse rates or slightly different signatures, they don't interact with each other, or they don't, let's say, negate each other, like an electromagnetic wave might. So even gravity is influenced by this. So as this incredibly fast rate of change is happening in each moment with the energy coming into our system, it provides, I don't want to say the illusion, but it provides the idea of, it's like an event pulse, or some people will probably end up calling it a time pulse. Because what it does is it allows events to take place sequentially inside of that field. So that the progression, it's a progression of energy. It's still in a pressure flow. It's still on an inflow and an outflow, like through our solar system, for example, but it's a progressive change in the geometry of the subatomic components. And so that allows the appearance of everything to be taking place sequentially, even though in reality, without that controlling overall overarching controlling pulse or that controlling change in energy signatures, everything would essentially be taking place at the same time. Now, this is very kind of heady and philosophical, but here's the thing. When you are creating etheric tapping technology, it's important to remember that the response to the different components in this technology and to the circuitry takes place at a nearly infinite velocity, and that will come into play in a very big way in the near future or in the future, however far, when these devices start to get scaled up or they are used in interconnecting manners over long distances. It is important that the engineering takes into account that you have a nearly infinite velocity in your response time. And that's really important, that is a reliable response time. It's practical, and it changes how you might consider a circuit, because they might say, well, wait, we've got this distance and that way should we consider the speed of light? The answer is no. The magnetic energy is not limited to the speed of light. It moves at a nearly infinite velocity. So even as the neutral energy has a slight polarization or slight changing signature, if you will, that happens very, very fast at a nearly infinite velocity, everything is fulfilled inside of that system, in the sense that whatever molecular structures, the energy flowing in and out of them, that energy is supplied at that incredibly high rate. Now, the interesting thing about that is, in certain counter-rotating and rotating magnetic fields and pulse rates, there's some similarity to gravity here when you start to interact with that dominant pulse rate, what we might call the event pulse or the time pulse. You can influence that, and you can start to negate that pulse rate or negate time, if you will. Now, when we get more sophisticated with this technology, every single moment will be tracked. So every moment has a unique, energetic, overarching pulse rate or signature, if you will, that kind of oversees that particular moment. So they may call it time travel, but it will be more like an event pulse travel. So when you have a ship, for example, enclosed in that, and you can travel to any specific area or group of magnetic pulse rates, time pulses, and that allows you to not only travel through time, even though there's no such thing as time, but it allows you to manipulate that as well in a way that might be needed for like industry purposes. Now, as humans start to interact with this technology, they will also be able to tune in to that change, and they will be able to, in a number of different ways, work with the magnetic technology to go see other areas of time, if you will, and explore that. And that'll just be part of exploration and part of travel, is understanding the different pulse rates that have taken those different energy signatures, and all of those could be cataloged. That will allow people to see any historical event with perfect clarity, and that has a lot of consequences for politics, for religion, for science, for the history of the world, as history is always rewritten by the winner. Well, that will change, because people will, with elevated consciousness and access to this technology, things will be verifiable. Historical events will be verifiable, and how those things really took place and how they actually happened. And so just, I would say, kind of brace yourself. Although, thank goodness that if we have higher consciousness involved, hopefully we won't react in too crazy of a manner to that. So, so yeah, the energy is coming in very fast, and the reason that it has to propagate and change very fast is because imagine a system that has an etheric flow that is a nearly infinite velocity and fulfilling its purpose with like what we would call matter or molecular structures, and sustaining those, like sustaining our physical reality. If that was not, if the change, the overarching change, wasn't at the equivalent velocity of the sustaining of those molecular structures, you can imagine very quickly how our physical reality would kind of break down. And so, and it also helps explain why it's so difficult from a conventional point of view to try to figure out time, because the signature of it is changing at an incredibly high velocity. And if you don't have like a pulsing magnetic field to interrupt that signature, it almost looks like the nature of our reality is impossible to crack. When in fact, it's just an etheric flow that has an always changing signature that we are all subject to. So, with that kind of strange explanation of how time doesn't really exist in the magnetic world, I will leave it at that, and we'll see you next time.